Welcome to episode 13 of Four Mortal Coils. This episode, the topic is what is consciousness? So we kind of pivoted around this particular topic or this thing for the last couple episodes now, but it's been kind of mentioned since the very first one, really, here and there. And I thought I'd add it to the roster because it just seemed like something we needed to dig into, you know? So, what is consciousness? To get this started, what I like to do is just start on my screen and work my way to the right and see like a good, concise answer from everyone as to the question and what they think might be fundamentally wrong with it. If they want to go that direction, really, it's up to them. And then from there, we'll open the floor. So, to get started, Tanner, the sunglasses.
Well, so we're doing strictly consciousness, right?
Yeah. Well, it depends. Yes.
So not sentience too. Huh?
Well, it depends on what you mean by sentience.
Well, sentience isn't that defined mostly as being self-aware? Like you
Yeah,
recognize that you are you.
it's been termed that way. Yes.
Okay.
It's
Well,
up to you.
I'll just stick strictly with consciousness for now, and if it happens, it happens.
Fair enough.
Um, I would define consciousness as the ability for a thinking organism to do two things.
Mm.
One, the ability to search for a meaning to its own existence, the ability, or I should say, the desire to have the meaning for one's existence, the ability to rationalize that you exist and you do not know why you exist. You know yourself, but you don't know why yourself. So it's the desire for that why question, the desire for truth, capital T truth, of course. And two, the ability to have rational control of emotion. I mean, we're all, I guess, hopefully mostly in agreement that emotion came first. The ability to feel came first evolutionarily. And then we, as humans, became what we are, masters of this planet, because we gained the logical ability, the rational ability to control those emotions and overcome them. The ability to do things like overcome temptation and think ahead.
Mm.
Like we're not out here all just fucking each other like a bunch of animals. We
Speak for
know how to resist
yourself.
that. Well, some of us, but you have to make that conscious decision. You're making a conscious decision. You have the ability to decide. You're not driven by your impulses. You have rational thought.
Mm-hmm.
And that's about where I stand as concisely as possible.
Very cool. Very cool. Well said from the man in the Ray-Bans. Well, next on my screen is Bray. Want to see how you feel about it?
Sure. What is consciousness? To me, I think that consciousness is an emergent property, or maybe you could even call it a phenomenon that happens when sensory information is fed into some sort of central body that has the capability for memory and the ability to access that memory or distribute that information amongst a bunch of different systems, sort of like we could consider like your limbs, motors, or feed information back to other sensors. But another critical part, I think, of consciousness is the ability to, beyond all of that, understand a self, which could be like if I was trying to describe my own self-awareness, I would say that I can understand that what I am, which is, in the simplest sense, a human being as we have classified ourselves. I exist physically in a physical universe, and my actions that I take based on my sensory input have physical consequences, to name a few little bullet points. But yeah, I think that's about it for
Very
me
cool.
so far. So
So far, we shall return.
I'm not the
to Steve.
psychology guru in the room.
Ah,
Yeah. Well, well, first, I'm happy to be here again. Our last attempt at an episode did not end well, so I'm just happy to be
He
back.
met his reckoning.
But look, I don't have a whole lot to add that hasn't already been said. What I'd like to eventually talk about is where does it begin, and not necessarily end, but you know, where does like having not conscious thought end and having conscious thought begin, that sort of thing. I hope that we kind of talk about that, like what separates us from the nearest intelligent animal to us, so to speak. That'd be a good place to think of it that way. I hope we end up driving and or being end up being okay with the idea that, you know, maybe it's a bit more blurry than we think.
Yeah, yeah. So from this point, I'd like to open the floor a little bit. One of the things I wanted to mention before we really dig into this thing, or I suppose it's the actual act of digging into it, but so a lot of the time, whenever we talk about things such as morality, let's say in the third episode, and carrying on from that point, we constantly refer back to you know, like this whole idea of like humanism, for example, and the reducibility of things down to the helping of things for humans and that sort of thing. Well, I wanted to circle on, like really dive into, or really come to understand what this thing about humans that makes us so special, and the reducible thing, the thing that everything reduces down into. Is it this consciousness thing? Is it just that we choose humans? You know, just for the I am a human, I'm going to choose humans. It's that's the state of affairs. Is it do we select things strictly because they have consciousness? Is that something? Is it just because something if something feels you know, in such and such a way, does that mean that it deserves some monicum amount of compassion, let's say, that sort of thing? But we really can't talk about any of that until we really nail down an understanding of consciousness. We really there's so much you want to do and have fun with.
As a byproduct of consciousness, I think empathy naturally follows. So the ability to know that something feels pain, you can empathize because you also feel pain, and you know you don't want to be hurt, and you know what being hurt feels like. So naturally, you'd be adverse to hurting something because of empathy. It's built into the system. You can rationally think and know that you are causing pain and you feel pain when you are hurt. So you don't want to cause that because you can identify with how that feels. You can...
So, Tanner, would you say that every instance of empathy is rooted in consciousness?
Not, well, that depends on one, how multi-leveled consciousness is across other high-functioning mammals, such as ourselves, or how empathy would be defined in this case.
Yeah.
Okay. Just
So one thing I wanted to say about this is, like, we're talking about multi-level here, like multi-levels to like consciousness. Well, one thing that's really important before we say anything about this, like Tanner and I were talking something vaguely similar to this just before the podcast started. When we talk of levels and like the idea that there is like this lines in the dirt of what consciousness is, that's based on we contrive of these levels ourselves so that we can better encounter it and like come to understand whatever it that we discuss of is, whatever concept it is. We create these distinctions in the dirt of let's say this and a that, and then from those we can derive ways of best interacting with the world in various ways. I just summon a little thumbs up there. I think I just did. Yeah, what if you? Yes, I did. I have no idea how to turn that off. We're just gonna.
Does it work for everybody? No,
I think just me. All right, I think I also can do confetti or balloons if I do this.
Yeah, hell yeah.
All right. That's intentional. I did that on purpose. And yeah, so we talk about these level things, but when we talk about consciousness, like it really feels like something that's not really a game, like that sort of game thing. It's really the question of wanting to see what is, and it's really difficult to discuss it and encounter it, because it's if I put it into levels, if I try to analyze it, like break it apart into many different things, I'm not quite sure what it is I'm even doing. It seems like I'm just doing something for the sake of my own fun. I'm not really deriving any actual answers from it.
Let me restate what I said about the empathy thing. Um, we know why we feel empathy. I think on some basic level, I mean, this has been proven with studies with rats in cages and them freeing their compatriots, or elephants seeing their fellow kind getting hurt, and trying to help them, or save them from pain or death. Um, I think on some level, every feeling being has some level of empathy because one, they know what pain feels like, and two, they know they don't want it because it's a bad thing because it
Mm-hmm.
hurts. We are a little bit different. If consciousness is a multi-level thing, we are the absolute pinnacle of that spectrum. We are the furthest end, as far as we know at the very least. But if it's going to be an all or nothing thing where we are conscious and everything else is not, why? That's going to be a much trickier question to get at. That's going to leave the realm of scientific inquiry behind, and we're going to have to get very metaphysical for that one.
So
Sure.
Tanner, I had another question for you. Would you be okay with saying that consciousness is a sophisticated response to stimuli? Like it's just a really, really complicated response to stimuli?
I'd say it's an understanding of stimuli.
Okay. Okay.
It's a knowing. Consciousness is knowing. I mean, I personally would say consciousness, in my point of view, is an all or nothing thing. It is not multi-leveled. We are conscious, everything else is not. That is why we are in the position we are, and everything else is in the position it is.
Right, but what you had
We
just said a second
know,
ago, yes.
we know, so we have subjugated. We have subjugated this planet to our will. We have,
Well, but the thing you had just said a second ago about like the empathy of elephants and of mice, I mean, it seems you have extended something to them.
I'm saying it exists independently of consciousness, and
Oh,
simply
so
by merit of knowing pain, you can at least rationalize somehow,
so it seems like we're
even
talking
without
about yes.
the rational thought I'm speaking of when I speak of humans.
Hmm.
You can think for yourself and know this hurts. I want to live. All of my genetics are screaming whenever I'm getting hurt to not get hurt, so that I continue on to pass on my genes. So
Hmm.
that you know that for your compatriot in the group, that they should also be granted at the very least some level of that same ability. And, and
So
certainly more observed in pack animals like mice or elephants, et cetera, for the sake of the group.
mhm.
Because I mean they're genetically programmed that way. I can't really explain it any further than that because I really don't know.
Mm,
But based on my understanding, that's where I would draw that line.
mhm. So one thing I want to say is, whenever I think about consciousness, I think we differ in this regard. Whenever I think about consciousness, I think of like there's a quality to a being. That is to say, there is, and all of y'all have heard this at least once before. There is something it is like to be that thing. That is to say, that I'm bearing on the assumption that there's a cat in one of your rooms right now. I feel like there might be.
Probably so.
Well, uh, is there something it is like quiet in the night while you're asleep? Is there something it is like to be your cat as they stare at you, getting ready to pounce directly under your face when you least expect? Or maybe they're quite friendlier than that. Maybe there's something it is like to see that cat not mind when you pick it up and put a hat on it that it obviously could do well without. You know,
Yeah, but the
is there
cat's unaware of
something
that.
the cat has no awareness of the fact that it has being, or there's something it is like to be that cat. Are you saying? So now I'm trying to interact with what you just said. That was really substantive. So what you're saying is there is something it is like to be that cat, but insofar as the cat isn't aware of the fact, there's not like this reflexive connection between what is and what isn't in that way, or past and present, or whatever it is.
Hmm.
Therefore, there is no such thing as to be a cat. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm saying that well, we can recognize that there is something like the cat that exists, and from your
Yes.
your, your explanation, the cat is unaware of that. The cat has no conception of this. While the cat is a thing in such that it is a being,
Hmm.
it is alive, it is a cat, it exists in reality as a cat.
Yes.
it is wholly unaware of any of that. It has no conceptualization of any of the why. It has no
Certainly.
way to approach the why. It has no way to ask the why question of why am I cat? All it knows
Certainly.
is I am me, I exist.
Well, why is that not sufficient for qualia or experience? For me, that's synonymous with consciousness.
All my cat knows is be gay, eat hot chip, and lie.
Yeah.
Just because you experience does not mean you are conscious.
So that comes back to that thing you mentioned at the very beginning about awareness and like sentience and that sort of thing. We're really mixing our peas in with our porridge here. There's this whole, there are many different things that we're talking about at the same time. You know, I'm talking about this and you're talking about that. When I think of consciousness, what I'm thinking of is the experience of reality. Like there's a certain like there's a certain something you get out of seeing the color red. There's a light on. There's presence within you, whatever that thing is, whether it be an ant.
Can we dive into
as far
that?
down as you can go. Say it.
Can we dive into that? I feel like that might be enlightening if we talk about what we mean by to experience reality.
Yes, because when I think of experiencing reality, that's synonymous with consciousness. Qualia is synonymous with consciousness. It's all one thing. Now, if you want to talk about self-awareness of the fact after the fact, that's a different conversation. Like one's a binary on or off switch. You either have qualia and experience or don't. And the other one is, well, where on the scale, in the scale that I determine right now after the fact, do you fit on the scale that I determined? You know, it's
I
something you
think
do
I
after the
have a
fact.
much more metaphysical description of consciousness than you might be working with. Right?
Certainly.
Because I'm speaking more from the rational human mind. Because what sets us apart from everything else, insofar as we have the ability to, one, look within ourselves and ask questions about ourselves and know ourselves, and two, the ability to basically, like I said previously, subjugate everything else, which we have done. We have used our superior intellects and our ability to, think ahead and rationalize to basically conquer this planet. We are the dominant life form. While we are not the most plentiful life form, we are dominant.
Yeah, it reminded me. Sorry, Dr. Koski, our philosophy professor, used to draw this thing on the board when we would talk about this exact kind of thing, and it was like a brain, like a head with a brain inside. It was like information coming in, and then like this weird spiral thing, and then stuff going out. And it was like the most critical part of the whole thing was that it was more than just experience. It was the inner rationalization of that, and that what goes
that's
out
what I'm getting at.
will never be the same as what came in.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at. I mean, we have the ability, like everything else, we experience things. We experience nature. We experience pain, pleasure, sorrow, happiness. But while we experience those things, we also somehow have the capacity to think about why that is, to rationalize it within ourselves, and to offer an explanation for why. We are concerned with why. We are concerned with truth. We can be concerned with truth. We can ask those questions. We have that capacity. We are conscious insofar as we have the ability and the drive and the desire for why.
Well, that's just it though. Like, why does that matter? I mean, like you mentioned earlier, like the whole extent of mankind, like our ability to extend its fingertips across the earth and perhaps across the stars. It very well could be said there will be a time where humans can extend their reach beyond much further than what you and I consider to be sci-fi today, even that sort of thing. But whoever said that mattered, it's dependent upon. That's a presupposition that you bring to the table to assert that is what consciousness is.
That's the whole point of this.
Well, I suppose so. I suppose so. You make a point.
All thought is based on presupposition and the processing information from my own point of view. If we choose to focus on that, then this whole system unravels, and none of this is sensible, and it all becomes absurd.
So I guess I'm trying to keep up with the conversation.
But
I know
it's thoughts like that, the ability to rationalize where this meaning is derived from, that makes us conscious. That's what separates us from everything else. So we have the
So what you
capacity
just did, though, yes.
to
So
ask
what
these
you,
questions.
yeah. So what you just did, though, and like all of this stuff, and like consciousness is just this thing that I am saying what it is right now. That's exactly why I'm conscious.
Yeah,
it's
the
fingers for focus. He's like, I got to keep all the thoughts right here, or else they're gonna run off the rails.
I'm trying to
agree
draw it with my hands. Like I'm characterizing. Like imagine, well, one second. Like I try to characterize. Like hey, this is the world that you're playing in. Like you created. Like hey, it's all just within this world that I'm currently creating for you right now. And also, I'm reaching in from outside of the world I created to show that it's real. You know. But in the end, like you can't say that it all happens within the world that you just abstracted as this is just what I say it is. And then say like, and then there's this other thing that's like shows that it has efficacy because you now playing entirely within this abstraction that you've created for yourself.
I only have agency within the sphere that I have created for myself. I can only have thoughts that I can have.
That seems fair.
You're right, but you can't say that consciousness ought to be anything other than the thing you. This is annoying.
I got lost at the claw game analogy. I was
I agree with Brayton insofar as consciousness is an emergent property biologically from the complexity of our brains.
He said something very important right there. He said something very important. He said biologically.
Yeah.
So it's of the physical state of affairs. Yes.
Yes.
So
I think it had to emerge physically. It's not a spiritual thing. I don't believe in a spiritual existence.
So that's just to say that everything is physicality. So
Or
you can't even say the word
technological possibility.
Well, that's within the subset of physical, is it? You know.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah, it's all within. It's all just physicality.
Well, but so is an organic possibility.
Right.
It's all physical.
Yes.
Yep.
So
there is no spiritual. For the folks at home who might have some sort of religious upbringing or be religious yourselves, you're wrong.
God damn, with his sunglasses on. This son of a bitch.
Dark Tanner.
I'm sorry to say it, you're wrong.
Dark.
There is nothing beyond the bounds which we have laid out for ourselves physically and explored scientifically. I'm sorry to say.
Yeah, I gotta say the periodic table in the background is really just making it so like such a hard take. You know, like what?
Damn it.
This man's got his
going full send tonight.
Full tint sunglasses with the cardigan and the full size periodic. This man's pulling no punches.
So here's a question about ants. To kind of feather into this thing that Bray mentioned earlier would be interesting.
Yeah, we should bring up that.
Yeah, like we're talking about. I want to talk about quality of experience. Is there, and Tanner, you yourself read this recently. Like, is there something it is like to be a bat? And right there, I just referenced Thomas Nagel and his work on consciousness himself. Is there something it is like to be then insert thing, for his sake, he worked with the mammalian thing, which is great because it's very, at least somewhat similar to ourselves, humans also being mammals. He inserted bat. Is there something it is like to be a bat in space? You know, it may not have this terrific experiential thing that Tanner speaks of for consciousness, but it could very well be said that there is something it is like to be a bat. It has a somethingness, a suchness, a quality to his existence. If it sees the color red, there's a certain somethingness to that sudden experience of the color red for that being, in the same way that there is one for yourself. Maybe not with this extra something, rather, I don't know what, but there is something there. In the same, like a binary on and off switch of whether or not it's present is on for both you and the bat, if that makes sense.
Sure.
Yeah.
Oh, you can speak, Brayton.
Oh no, I was just gonna say it's weird to hear things like that, like the questions of is there something that it's like to be X, and the X is almost always some sort of living thing, and to me it seemed incredibly obvious that for anything that has sense perceptions, a brain, and reacts to an environment, et cetera, like it seems like there would obviously be some sort of experience, that it is like to be that thing. So are there?
With them.
Do what? I empathize with it.
Well, yeah, I think what you're trying to say is, Bray, like if it's alive and going, we could probably empathize with it at least a little bit.
Well, I didn't even know if I would use the word empathize there. I would just like I can comprehend based on my own experience. Like,
It's perspective.
you know, I mean, I can't possibly understand what echolocation would, sorry for using this word, feel like, but, you know, or what it would feel like to fly, or something like
But
that.
we can imagine.
But I can imagine the possibility, and, you know, or for something that doesn't see the same sort of spectrum of light, or does see more, or does certain things. Like, it's easy to imagine that. So I wonder, I mean, are there people that are like, again, like, think that there isn't something that it's like to be, say, a bat, or, you know...
Well, a criteria for existence is there being something like that thing. No? So if it exists, there's something like it to be it. No, by definition, it's there. It exists.
What do you mean?
There.
What do you mean? What do you mean by something? What do you mean by that something? Do you mean like something that is living, or do you mean just there is something?
Anything. I mean,
so there's
there
something
is
that's like to be a
something-
chair.
there is something like this book that exists because
Oh.
it is here. It exists. Definitionally, there must be something like this book which exists because it
Right.
exists. It's self-referencing by nature.
Well,
Okay,
but,
well,
but is there something it is like to be that?
that's,
thing?
yeah.
That's a big difference.
I was
Like,
gonna say for some to
We're
say
about to get platonic, boys.
the
We're-
book exists, therefore it exists is one thing, but it's like the book exists, therefore there is an experience that it is like to be the book.
Well, I
That's-
didn't
that's
say
different.
that. The book can't experience. The book is
okay,
inanimate.
so that's the separation. then.
Experience
That's what we're
is-
talking about.
Okay.
The ability to experience is tied specifically to an animate thing.
Animate. Well, what makes something animate?
Well,
Purposeful
I mean, can it
interference.
react to stimuli? Can it?
Uh,
He was trying to
Doesn't it say
nitpick your
animate?
use of the
Animate
word
is
animate
too
there.
broad a term. Animate and describe.
that's pretty
things.
said. That's pretty well said. But I do want to say though, like this is something that Brace said a second ago that I kind of want to poke on. Like you mentioned, like okay, well it's quite obvious. You know, it has a brain, it has sense perceptions. Not talking about a bat. It seems quite clear to me that there would be something it is like to be a bat, that sort of
Yeah.
thing. So there are two things about that. Two things. Number one, how far are you willing to reduce from there? How small can I make this brain, and you would still say that this thing has experiential, not knowledge, because knowledge is a referential thing against what else is it?
In
What else
so
is present?
far as it in some capacity can respond to an outside stimulus, I would say that it, in the very least, is a living thing.
Ooh. Do we want to put any more qualifiers on that? Because
I can think
lot
of
of
some
things.
places where this breaks down, so give me a second.
Squidward,
By
I think Mr.
complex-
Krabs is a robot.
Look, I know what Tanner's trying to get at here. And to adjust his definition for him a little bit, I would guess that he would say this. Some complex biochemical machinery comes together to make an organism that is responsive to stimuli above a certain threshold. I guess that would be his definition.
Sure.
For it.
And the ability to then process that stimuli and then have a reaction.
Well,
Would
well,
you
two
describe a
things.
plant as conscious?
Not conscious, but it would be living.
Is there something it is like?
Or
to
maybe
be
I
that plant?
conflated the terms then, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah, that's
these
why I
are,
said conscious above a certain level. You know what I mean?
well, so two things to that. Number one, if we are just physical things, physical phenomenon, the four of us, and so so it's like a computer, let's say. Why does it have to be an organic being? Why can't it be something or other that isn't organic?
Yeah,
And then
baby!
the second thing,
I
and then
said
the
that
second
because I
thing-
know that that's what Tanner would say.
right, I know.
right. And the second thing is there is a threshold. You know, you say above a certain threshold. Well, this comes up to this is an often thing that was brought up. Almost finished. So this is an often thing that was brought up. Like that reminds me of something that Hitchens said, or was it Dawkins? I mix up some of the arguments.
Let's just say it's Hitchens so we can get our...
Yeah. So we
our
get
opinion,
All
yeah.
right, so the idea of heaven and hell is extremely strange, and that if you were to line up everybody that ever lived and draw a line of all these people are going to heaven and all these people are going to hell, there is like this one point between two different people that are completely utterly similar in every single discernible way in terms of morality, but for whatever reason the line was drawn here, and everybody on the left of this is going to heaven and the other and on the right of this is going to hell. Some tiny separation between these two people, between this drawing line, and for whatever reason eternal damnation awaits for everyone on the left of the line. And the same thing can be said for this, like this threshold. We're talking about not all of humans. That's everybody on that is I presume to be everything on the right, or at least almost entirely, but also all things that have ever existed exist somewhere within this spectrum. And this threshold is extremely difficult to encounter in that way, because it becomes the heaven and hell problem. It becomes a arbitrary line between two completely indistinguishable things.
You're talking about artificial intelligence compared to our human experience.
You can make a transhumanist if you want. I tried to just then, but you could do it with quite literally all of existent things within space that exists. I should say, like the drawing line drawn right there that you've created. We start with things. We could start, just to keep things simple, just with organic life. Let's just start there. There are ants on this line. There are humans on this line. There are bats on this line. There are cows. There are sheep. There are lizards. There are scorpions. There is a full spectrum of things.
Can there be penguins?
Say what?
Can there be penguins?
Sure.
Okay.
There's also penguins on that list.
Side note: has anyone seen that Bill Nye stuff with him going through that Noah's Ark thing?
Oh, great video!
Yeah. Did he go to the Creation Museum? Did he?
Yes, dude.
Yeah, with Ken Ham.
Lord
delicious.
Yes, and he was a fucking savage. It was bad.
Yeah, that was good video.
So
yeah, go ahead, Trevor.
What allows you to draw a threshold, a line there between one seemingly innocuous penguin and some other penguin, let's say, or whatever other way you want to draw it, between species or between individuals within a species on a particular trajectory? Like, what gives you the ability to draw the line?
Well, I mean, I personally would draw as many lines as there were between individual creatures and living things on this planet, because none of them can be equated to each other, because they are all on some level different, no matter how minute.
Yes, certainly, and that's another thing that we've talked about quite a lot. But one thing I'm talking about is like this binary yes and no. This does seem to be binary. This thing I'm currently talking about, it's either you have it or you don't. Is there something it is like to be Bray, let's say? Is there something it is like, if that binary on and off switch? Yes.
Tanner's saying that there are at least as many levels of cognition as there are different species on this planet.
Yes.
You know, because there have to be at least that many.
Some penguins are better than other penguins at doing penguin things.
No two brains are centered of.
I mean, I wouldn't even equate like different people to the same type of consciousness. Our experiences are all unique by merit of simply just being us. I'm not you, you're not me. I cannot draw an equivalence between myself and Brayton because I'm not him and he's not me.
Right.
I could, like Trevor and I were talking about earlier.
There's at least as many.
I'm forced to play the game as myself. I'm forced to play the game this way. I'm bound by these rules set before me.
You don't have to play the game.
No, you have to play the game.
I'm just
you have no other option.
Well, okay. I'm going to take this even further than that. Actually, not only can you break it between individuals, and I do suspect you had already said this, but individuals throughout time themselves have many different states of consciousness, whatever that thing is, or states of being, let's say, between different points in time. That's another thing that Tanner and I discussed just a second ago. But I do think I want to hear how you feel about this one question, and then from there, I think my point about lines in the sand becomes still just. Are there some things out there where it is something it is like to be that thing, and are there some things in contra to that it is nothing it is like to be them, such as there is something it is like to be Bray. There is not something it is like to be Bray's sofa. Is that true? Is that necessarily true within the way that you're currently encountering this?
Well, definitionally, you can break up pretty much the existence of any item into that which it is and that which it is not. There's a dichotomy you can draw between every object, between it and what it isn't in the universe. There is, for instance, I can make the statement, there is this book and there is everything else that isn't this book. This book is specific, it is unique, and it is individual in that it is this book. Its atoms are arranged in such a way that it has created this specific book. And if you could take every atom out of this book, they would all comprise this book. Every atom and its orientation and its composition is unique for this book at the most specific level, and everything else is not this book definitionally.
Sure.
Now, I don't deal in ideals. So everything is basically itself.
That was such a hard quote. I don't deal in ideals.
Well, so, I don't. Definitionally, the concept of an ideal item is silly. I mean,
I agree with that. Yes.
We disproved Plato, thousands of times over.
I'm going to make him an ideal he can't refute.
I mean, well, there is a concept in our head of what a book is.
No. Now we have to turn Tanner into an ideal. That way he can't believe himself.
So here's the thing. Tanner, I completely agree with that assertion you just made about there are no ideals and that sort of thing. I do. But I don't think that encountered this whole thing of, are there some things where it is liked something to
Actually, this gets at what Stephen was wanting to talk about with the collective unconscious and what divides conscious and unconscious thought. Because, I mean, we all share a conception of what a book is.
But can you be my sofa, Tanner?
Can you really say that, though? Can we really all share a conception? I think that's where it all completely breaks down. I don't think it's necessarily true.
That's where I'm trying to get to.
Trevor,
I see.
Trevor, it's not where it breaks down, it's where it comes together, and that's how we know what objective reality is.
No, I completely disagree.
No, I'm not.
Objective reality.
What the fuck is going on?
All right. Well, Tanner, what I'm trying to say is
like a sound argument.
Yeah. What I'm trying to say is, is there something it is like to be Bray?
Yes.
Yes.
Is there something
by definition he exists? Therefore, there is something like him. Therefore, there's something like to be him.
Then it must follow that there is something it is like to be that couch.
Sure, insofar as that couch exists, there's something like it that exists. Therefore, there's something like that couch.
Yes, well, but it has no sensory perception. So
does it have qualia?
Okay, somebody's going to have to explain that one for the masses because that's an out there term.
Okay. So qualia is synonymous with experience. It is basically if I walk into a room. Well, what's the best way to encounter it? Oh,
I was going to say, the couch cannot experience, but the couch can be experienced.
Okay, so that's the separation.
The Jimi Hendrix argument for...
That's the separation. That's the issue, fundamentally. So what you're saying is there are some things
in all of existence. There are things.
Tanner, that sounds like okay. This sofa is at this level of cognition, and humans are somewhere up here. We can go down
the sofa
to the level
has
of the
no
sofa,
level
but we can't.
I mean, I get what he's saying.
But the sofa
we cannot know what a sofa experiences because a sofa cannot experience. We cannot empathize with a sofa.
You can certainly empathize with the sofa.
I think we can imagine.
You can simulate in your mind what it would be like to be a sofa.
You certainly can. People have done it.
Yeah, well.
But we can't.
You're doing it now.
Listener, you're doing it right now.
Oh,
the couch has no experience.
Well, that's the issue, though. I mean, and just like that, you have to. So when you do that, when you make that announcement, like, don't get me wrong, that's a very sympathetic argument. It's a very strong one. I think most people work on that assumption.
I'm sorry, this conversation, if I had just took a big rip right before we started talking.
It really shit the bed, I'm going to be honest with you. But the reason why I brought up all of this is if you admit that there is something that's like to be Bray and admit that there's not something that's like to be a sofa, Do you also, can we pull the line a little bit further and say, is there something it is like to be an ant, a singular one ant? Is there something it is like to be that being? It has sensory
To
organs.
us, it would be like
Hmm.
nothing to be an ant.
As a comparison, but this is a binary off and on switch. In the same way that there is nothing it is like to be a sofa, and there is something it is like to be a prey. Is there? If you look at it as an on and off switch in that regard, which side of the on and off switch does the ant exist within? Is
Well,
there something? Because that's very on and off. You either there is something that's like to be you, or there isn't. Now we could talk about adding layers onto it. Of there's a lot more in terms of this particular predisposition to a desired effect. To say that there.
Did he cut out for you
Oh,
guys too?
he's cut out a little bit for me. He might jump back in here in a second, unless, I don't know, we just had a solar flare or something.
A neutrino
That's only affecting
his CPU and a bit
Right.
flipped, and now his computer's broken.
Yeah, they turned his off switch. There is
Yes.
now nothing it is like to be Trevor.
There's something that's like to be Trevor.
He's been.
I've used my
What's in-
Professor X powers to end his existence.
A neutrino went straight
Oh,
through it.
okay. Well, he's
Yeah.
disconnected, so I think maybe he's going to be trying to join back. But I think one thing I was going to say in response to where he was going was that by introducing a sort of discrepancy between the couch and an ant, we introduce by bringing in the ant different qualities of being between the couch and the
His
ant.
laptop
Laptop
died.
Oh,
What a
rookie mistake.
bastard. What a
I would
ass.
like to offer something. So, take human consciousness as being the sum total of every other kind of intelligence that can possibly exist. We have, for the most part, say we have all levels of cognition. We have the capacity then, because we have all the tools, to take a step back and experience and consider life at a lower level. Take a step back and experience cognition at an even lower level than that. We have the capacity to take those steps back because we have, say, all the tools, and we have the ability.
Can we not,
Hmm.
Tanner? Hold on a minute. Can we not imagine what it would be like to be a higher being?
Well, to experience a level of cognition higher than our own? No, we cannot, because we are
Yeah, sure
bound
we
by the
can.
limits we have for
Hold on, sure we
ourselves.
can. So like, think
Hmm.
about it this way. Like, think about it this way. Think about a fiction, um, like X-Men. You just talked about X-Men a little bit. Those guys get to ignore the laws of physics all the time. We can imagine a state of being
Hey, can y'all hear me?
much yeah.
Oh, he's back.
Yeah.
But look, we
I'm
can
back.
imagine a state of being far above our own. Like Tenor as well. Think of it this way, from circling to the same
No, we can
scientific
imagine.
standpoint.
We can imagine what we think that would look like, but we can't imagine what that would be. We have no way to conceptualize how a being that can cognitize, I think that's the word, higher than at a level higher than we can.
So
We can only
Sure we-
infer
sure we
based
can.
on the
We
bounds
just-
we
we
have
do it-
set on ourselves. We
We
can.
do
So-
stories all the time, though.
Mm.
But like,
So-
what I'm
so-
trying to say is, look,
Yeah.
at whatever level of cognition we are, we have to stop. We have to stop presupposing that ours is the only or highest level of cognition, because there's so many levels below us. It would be really unlikely that there would be none higher than ours.
So,
You know what I mean?
so one thing I'll say, whenever we talk about higher or lower, I mean, this is higher or lower according to a certain pole or desired direction you want to head towards. That is to
Or
say,
just a level
it-
of complexity. I mean, so for example, other animals may be able to plan something out and then
Yeah.
execute that plan. But we can plan things that happen over the span of like,
Yeah. Not only can we
generation.
reason, we can reason beyond ourselves. No.
Yeah, we can reason far beyond, what one of us is just capable of. We're able to pass down knowledge, just like a lot of other organisms. We can pass down so much. you know, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I guess it's more of like a magnitude thing. Because I was thinking, as like, it seems almost like I know why we're doing it, but it seems a little silly, almost like how it's silly to say that human beings are more evolved than any other species.
Yeah, I mean, I
Yeah,
completely
no, it's
agree.
But
Systematizing anything is stupid.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, here we are.
Cool. Well, I have returned from a slight lull. It sounded like the conversation kept on, which I like to see.
Yeah, all I said was that I thought that it was worthwhile mentioning that where you were going, that by introducing an ant to the couch comparison, that we were introducing different qualities of being as opposed to the couch, which has no capacity for memory, no sense perception, no ability to react to the world other than what is, it's physically bound to by the natural laws. I guess the as far as its memory is concerned, is the impression I leave in the cushion by sitting on it.
Right.
I mean, the sofa has a creator as well that we can point to. It's not really emergent, so to speak. It is in a bigger sense, maybe.
So y'all might have referenced this while I left. I'm really interested. So what exactly do we mean by emergent? What exactly is emergence?
Being more than the sum of its parts.
We should do philosophy parody videos. Like, we'll do a foreigner parody, and it's like, consciousness, it's emergent, urgent.
So that's
I to me, the word emergent just sounds like the result of, I don't know, like an action or an event or some things coming together, some coalescence.
Actually, I have a pretty good way to describe this physically.
Oh
I
boy.
swear I thought he was about to take off his pants.
Chemistry.
I swear to God.
It literally means, though, more than the sum
Yeah.
of its parts. And
Certainly,
also
certainly.
it means temporary.
So this is my pocket watch.
Mm-hmm.
I restored it back to working condition. I got it in broken condition. It's a little over a century old. If you look behind the back plate, you can see within the working mechanism. All of these parts work together in this mechanical system to accomplish a goal. The goal is greater than the sum of its parts in that it tells time. It fits a higher purpose than just moving in space, than just turning potential energy into kinetic energy. It fulfills a task. It fulfills a metaphysical goal higher than the physical goal that it is set to doing. So the ability to tell time is emergent from the movement of all these parts. So same thing with your ability to cognize. It extends from all the neurochemicals firing off in your brain. In perception of signals, hot and cold, et cetera, all goes together to make you you.
Mm-hmm. So one thought I have about that is, so we've all already stated that everything is the physical state of affairs. It's physicality, what you see before you. We're not talking of, we no longer allow into our paradigm of what the universe is, the idea of like spiritual effects or anything like that. It's all physicality. And that, within that frame of reference, within viewing the reality as such in that way, is everything not just of the physical state of affairs? That is to say, that when I think of more than the sum of its parts, to me, it's all of reality up until this point is the sum of the parts that leads to the desired state of affairs that directly follow afterwards. Not desire, but just the state of affairs that follow afterwards.
Yeah, meaning is inferred.
Meaning is inferred. So to me, the idea of emergence is this distinct thing that occurs within humans, let's say, as well as within cats or elephants. This emergent property of the complexity of it. Because I can sympathize with this opinion. I've thought about it before, but it seems strange to me that this thing that is itself just the physical act of affairs, the physical phenomena occurring that lead towards further physical phenomena, it seems to me that everything is just the state of affairs. everything is just the sum of its parts, and you just see things for yourself as you, specifically Tanner, interact with reality. You find value in this thing,
Yes.
such as the time being told on this clock or on this watch, or you find value in this or the other thing, such as like visualizing Bray in a way that you and I would find synonymous with
Trevor,
soulness.
Trevor, to kind of wrap this into a package that anyone could understand, you know, could we not at least just say that like it has interactive qualities that emerge? Does that make sense?
Well, even interaction is inferred. Even.
Well, what I'm trying to say is like it has an interaction, you know, so that interaction for Tanner is favorable, so to speak.
I mean, if you wanna break everything down as far as it will go, I mean, everything is just interactions between wave functions. So
Well,
that's all reality is. So that's all anything is. So it's infinitely reducible down to that point.
I think there's a
Everything
difference
after
between
that, from our perspective and from any outside observer's perspective, is inferred. Any mathematical constants, any mathematical breakdown, any modeling, anything, all of our mathematics is inferred based on what we've seen before us. So it's not a thing that exists in nature on its own. We made it up. It's a description of the physical world. That's all it is.
It's a communication. It's an interaction that we share.
It's an inference.
So, to me, that means necessarily that it is the sum of its parts, just like everything else is. It's not more than the sum of its parts. It's
Yeah,
more
at the
than
bare
insofar.
minimum, everything is at the very least its parts.
No.
But
What I'm saying is, yes. No, you know
We-
what? Just when you said we, I think you and I connected on what we're talking about here. But
Yeah. Outside of the sum of its parts, I mean, everything is literally just matter, more or less. So that we take all the stimuli in, we see light reflected, we process that in our brains, and that gives us the image of everything we see before us. So our brains make sense of that insofar as we have been conditioned to interpret all of these things as things because we learned the schemata, we learned the language, we learned the descriptions. And we've seen these things. We know what has value based on what's important to us because it promotes either, living or dying. We need it or we don't. Or we're attached to it emotionally because we have emotions tied up with it, whether that be hate, anger, love, etc., etc., etc. Outside of everything being the sum of its parts, so any and all meaning is on any level. When I say meaning, I mean, meaning to me at the very basic level, because all I can infer is my own meaning. It's inferred. It's inferred by me and my ability to cognize, to take it in, to know what it is, and to determine it. That's it. Just determine it.
right. So that is to say that emergence is something that you're currently. Emergence is a concept that you use to better interact with reality. Reality is, without you in the room, just the sum of its
Without
parts.
emergence, nothing is.
What I'm trying to say is, you're using emergence as a way of interacting with things, and outside of that realm of things, or this way, what am I getting at here? Shit. A little smirk from Steven.
I don't know.
It's goddamn.
I thought it was worth noting earlier when we were talking about the watch that I can't remember exactly what you said, Trevor, but there was trying to draw some distinction between, I guess, being a conscious being and as far as more than the sum of a parts is concerned, versus the watch, which is just a bunch of pieces that fulfill a function. But if you have no idea what the function, what to extrapolate from the function, then it's meaningless. Right. Like, I mean, we came up with seconds, minutes, hours, etc., and the whole concept. And so unless you even know how to read a watch, it's useless to you other than just moving parts. And so that is something that requires our input, so to speak, but it isn't in the same way that I guess our consciousness is. I'm trying to remember exactly how we were framing that in opposition to something. as emergence. Like the emergent property of the watch requires something else to, I don't know, be, whereas our consciousness, which is an emergent property of our parts, doesn't require any external, all right, well, validation perhaps, because we are the only, possible.
You are the only thing that you can know.
Right.
Does something having an emergent property, to me it seems like a way of conceptualizing. It's like an idea game that's done by you as you interact with the world. Like the way that you explain that watch, for example. If I were a caveman walking around or walking on the beach, if you want to use that old watchmaker argument.
Oh, no.
My first immediate thought when Tanner brought that up. Whatever you want to say as to the original argument, you may not necessarily say a random person who had never seen a watch before picks it up and doesn't know time according to the way that we conceive of time according to a watch. They can't look at that and infer the metaphysical meaning of telling time from that watch. That's something that you're currently acting on. Right. It's a conceptualization. It's a way of interacting with it. And just like that, emergence is, at least in that instance, a thing that you are conceiving of to better engage with and encounter that piece of parts. The greater than the sum of its parts, the greater than-ness of it that makes it emergent is something you're currently using it for. It basically has a utility that extends. Let's say
you have to give a meaning to the thing first and foremost.
So that's the fundamental issue, though, because you can say that about watches and you would be correct. I think that there's a utility to looking at watches in that way.
Well, I can say that about a table. I can say that about the couch. I can say that
you
about
can say that about anything,
table.
really.
I have the meaning to ascribe to it because I'm conscious, and I can ask the why question.
Right.
And I can say, why is couch?
Right. But I don't know if that's synonymous with, and that's the same thing as what Tanner is, the conscious thing that is Tanner.
Well, yeah, I'm more complex than a couch.
You are more complex than a couch, but I'm not trying to necessarily say that it's about complexity. I'm trying to say that there is something it is like to be Tanner, and that something it is likedness isn't due to the metaphysical nature of what I insist upon you, Tanner. Like it's not. You don't have a somethingness to your being because I think you do. Although, as far as I could ever embrace you, that is as far as
I mean, if we're going to take that to its full absolute limit, I mean, I exist because I will myself so. I think, therefore I am, Cogito ergo sum.
Well, what I'm trying to say is, you're not emergent in the same way that a watch is emergent. You are, or the thing about you isn't the emergence that you ascribe to watches. There is something it is like to be Tanner, and that's not something that is in the same sense as that watch greater than the sum of its parts. Those two different definitions are of two different concepts entirely.
From my frame of reference, I fulfill a different purpose. I am the prescriber of meaning. I do not have meaning prescribed upon myself because from me all meaning is prescribed.
Well,
I think you all cut out for me.
You're right. That is, of course, unless you and another supposedly conscious entity.
Well, I can still hear you. I think. Say stuff.
Come to an agreement on stuff.
Good stuff.
Good stuff. Here, you froze too. Oh wait, there you go. There you go. This man. All right. Well,
that internet must be pretty shoddy out in Guyana.
They'll never find me. I'm actually in a library right now, boys.
Yeah. Deep inside French Indochina. Yeah.
But no, from my frame of reference, I am the focus of my frame of reference. I can't see what's funny.
I hate that real bad. Deep inside French.
I think I'm gonna try to reconnect. 1 second.
No, don't leave. No, you're good. Don't leave. You'll break the internet. You'll break the recording. I swear to God. Did he leave? I hope he didn't. Oh, thank God for Bray's secondary recording.
Oh my gosh.
Is he gone?
I don't know.
I don't know.
I was really wanting to talk about where we draw the.
Oh, there he's back.
Oh,
he's
here we
back.
go.
Yeah,
Tanner, did you leave and come back?
No, I stayed in here the entire time. My counter's still
Okay.
going up.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I mean, my camera fell. Sorry about that,
Yeah.
folks at home.
Yeah.
But Bray, you want to talk about what now?
Oh no, I thought it would be worthwhile for us to yeah, let Tanner get set up.
There we go.
Mm.
Oh, wait, we got a lot of feedback from your end, Tanner.
Oh.
Yeah, it's pretty heinous.
But going off of what I was saying, can you
No,
all
I
still
mean-
hear me?
Well, your feedback, your feedback is really bad. Like if I talk, I hear my voice twice, and then I hear it through break. It's pretty bad. All right?
Let me try something. Hang on.
All right. This episode, like episode 13, it was cursed as fuck.
Right.
I gotta say,
I think
God
it's better
damn.
now.
it is
Yeah.
better.
Can you all hear me?
It's a lot better.
Mhm.
I can hear you. I don't hear
Okay,
me.
I had you guys first up against my book, eh?
Oh, I see. God damn.
1 of 1.
Yeah. All right.
But as I was stating previously, I am the focal point of my point of view. I am that from which all meaning is derived. So I dictate what is. What did I do?
No, it's just Bray started laughing, so I can't help it.
Ignore me. Oh, hello.
But I am from which all meaning is given. Eh?
Certainly. All right, Bray, you had something?
Oh, I was saying that we should talk about where the line is drawn between. So let me clarify this a little bit before I say it. We talked about how we, using the vocabulary mentioned, would be, say, a higher form of consciousness than like a bat or an ant.
A higher,
or cognitive level. And
only fools would just, not understand that.
Sure. Because we have all these sort of capabilities, like the ability to plan really far ahead, or we can maybe we can remember a lot more, or we have.
Or we can once again ask why.
Ask why.
Well, all of this
maybe.
is in relation to like complexity. Yes, is that the pole that we were balancing this all on, or comparing this to?
I guess it really depends on which particular point, but more to what I'm trying to talk about is we are getting to a point now where artificial intelligence is capable of doing things, like we talked previously in the episode, is capable of doing things to a much more complex and higher magnitude than we are capable, even though it is inorganic. And
Just say nothing of the bats.
Right. And so I'm wondering, if I very intentionally described consciousness at the beginning in this way, because whenever I think about consciousness, I am constantly thinking about, I just watched Tanner like slowly rise up in his frame. Anyways,
like, glitches up.
I had a Viagra stuck in my neck from earlier. Sorry, boys.
When I think about consciousness, I'm constantly thinking about, well, why can't this be considered conscious, or why can't that be considered conscious? And I'm usually thinking about something like a computer. Because what I have is an emergent phenomenon that occurs when sensory information is, held in central location or distributed, accessed by multiple actors, or, things that can foster action. And that's quite literally what a computer does. I mean, if I have, I've got 3 separate memory device is hooked up to this computer right now, that it's pulling. I mean, right now, this podcast is being recorded and written to an external solid state drive, and I can then, I could have this computer take actions and do things completely of its own volition, so to speak, by running a program. Obviously, it's like assisted consciousness almost. Like I'm holding the computer's hand and walking it through the majestic. Well, I mean, if I push a button and then suddenly it can do everything on its own by running this, program.
Well, it's not. It seems to. Wouldn't you more better equate that to like the same way like a slinky falls down the stairs? In the same way that it just follows the state of affairs. It's just as a slinky falls exactly.
There is something to be said about that. Fall. Am I just a slinky falling down the stairs after I got shot out of my mother's womb?
What? Well, that equates to follow.
Or are you
I heard both of you talk at once.
Please,
Tanner.
Do you believe in determinism? Do you?
Not.
Or do you have free will?
Well, what is free will in that regard? I mean, we've all stated that there is such a thing as this is all physicality. The way that all four of us encounter reality is it occurs within a physical stance. It's all physical. Well, in that regard,
but I'm saying, like, even consider this, because I don't want to bring it down that rabbit hole as we're getting ready to close this episode. That could be another episode, the free will thing. But I'm saying, like, just say you're running a program on a computer, but for sake of how it got started or whatever or anything like that, if the computer has the capability, which is really what we're talking about when we talk about free will, to make a genuine decision, I'm trying to figure out the difference between a computer taking in data like we do, and then analyzing that data, however it does that in comparison to us, and then choosing what to execute based on that information. I mean, to me, if you had a human being and let's just make it an android for simplicity, it's not just a box. It's something that is basically a robot human standing next to each other, and somebody's pointing a gun at both of them. And they're like, all right, I want you to take the most logical action that you can here, and we'll forsake getting into specifics or whatever. And, they're going to pull the trigger in 10 seconds, and you do whatever. And the human's going to go, well, I'm going to get the fuck out of the way because I don't want to get shot. And, the rationalization is, well, this is in 10 seconds, bullet's going to fire, it's going to come directly at me, it's going to cause major, hemorrhage and blood loss, and then I will eventually bleed out and die if I remain where I am. So I will move. I see no issue with the computer having access to the necessary information that the same critical information that the human would, making the same decision if it is getting fed all the same information.
Right,
yeah.
Right.
It can only ever imitate, however. It can't. So if we're talking in the sense of AI,
could it imitate consciousness?
Well,
could we still call it conscious even if it's just imitating?
Now this is where we're going to have to draw a very
find out next time on Dragon Ball.
Very funny line.
Funny line.
Because if you fully imitate something, do you create that thing, or do you create something that is like that thing but not that thing? Is there a degree of separation because this was created based on something? This gets back to an old Platonic concept of like the degrees of separation between a thing and then something else made like that thing. So like the concept of the Platonic ideals of like a chair, and then a chair you make. Well, there are degrees of separation from that ideal concept of a chair. In the same way, there's a degree of separation between your consciousness and one that could be hypothetically created artificially to model your consciousness perfectly. Now, would that be you? Or would that be something fulfilling a set of tasks that makes up you? At what point do we define this thing as being the thing, or is this just a model of the thing?
Well, that's what I mean, is that I don't see the difference between, like, I don't see the difference in myself as being just a system that's executing tasks. You know, if I'm hungry, then my body tells me I need to go eat something.
Certainly.
If I'm thirsty, you need to use the bathroom. If I'm, you
Yeah,
know,
but a thing imitating you would only do those things because they are things you would do.
Right. So
Tanner,
this all
what
of
if
this comes down to the
Tanner,
fundamental.
what if perhaps it's this way? All right, just to kind of help out a little bit. What if being conscious is so complex that if something imitates being conscious, it's done such a complex task that now it is conscious itself? Like, in other words, the task was to imitate it, but now because it is imitated, now it has it because it's that complex.
I mean,
So
I still wouldn't consider it.
well, here's the thing. I think this is the wall between Stephen Bray and then Tanner on the other side. So I bring this up a lot because I think it's important. We have said a couple times there is something that is like to be Bray. The fundamental statement is this thing conscious. I think, if not entirely fitted within, it at least requires that there is something that is like to be that thing. There is something that's like to be Bray, and Bray is conscious. I do think that you do have to say that there is something it is like to be this computer for that thing to be conscious. It can't just be. Now you could say that when I say like it can't just be a slinky rolling down a set of stairs. Well, who's to say that I'm not also doing it? I think that's a really good argument, Bray, to make that one, because it does seem to be, if this universe is one of physicality and everything is just of the previous state of affairs just now. In that way, you could say that everything is a slinky rolling down its own hill, and we could really start to be really curious about this statement of there's something it is like to be Bray, there's something it is like to be Trevor. Why can't there be something it is like to be the physicality which makes up this computer, which also seems to do the thing that is such that it is like a slinky rolling down the hill? Well, to that I would say, I don't know, but
well, I think about a lot of, yeah, I mean, no, it's a fair thing. I do want to say one thing that I will trip people up a lot is that we don't typically think of, you know, robots that we see these days, like real robots, not like fictional movie stuff, like Boston Dynamics robots. They don't have any sort of sensor perception for, you know, like pain or anything, or like I don't know how advanced they are, but I don't imagine that they would feel like air like that I can feel right now as I wave my hand around. Like they're very much simple, as much as I can use liberties on that word, to complete the task that they're being designed to do. But I mean, you know, we've said before, a sufficient imitation, just because it is inorganic, to me, there still must be something that it is like. I mean, we're still talking about electrical impulses, you know, unless there is, like we've been talking about, somewhere in that line, something about being organic that necessitates your experience. Obviously, the experience is going to be different. We've already said it's going to be different even between two human beings. But is there something beyond that discrepancy between something that's inorganic and organic, even if their experiences could be almost completely alike?
Well, so where I see it breaking down, you can imitate the human ability to problem solve with a computer. You can do it 10,000 times better than a human can problem solve. I mean, you can do complex logical reasoning with a computer billions of times a second, where a human can probably struggle with maybe doing a couple problems in their head at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a very high functioning human as well. But where my issue with what really comprises an intelligence is all the aspects of that intelligence. So you have your ethos, your pathos, and your logos. Specifically here, I'm talking about pathos and logos. Those two components of rhetoric and rhetorical thought and speech and whatnot. You can do logic reasoning on a computer. You can do logic gates, and you can do yeses and nos, and you can arrive at a conclusion that we would arrive the same way we would as people. But where it starts to break down is pathos, that pathology, the ability to feel and emote and understand those emotions. You can only ever imitate that with a computer. You cannot make a feeling thing. You can only make a thing that fulfills a task such that it is doing this, therefore it must be this way. It can only fulfill a task. It can't have the thing itself.
Well, see, then
So
that's a conversation I'd be interested in knowing more about, from the psychological, the neuroscientific aspect, is why.
Yeah, I hate to bring this up like toward the end of it.
No, it's okay. I mean, we can always just leave it off there and continue the conversation.
The
but
question Bray might have is, do children learn to cry at sad movies from their parents? To then
do they learn to cry at
that
sad movies?
behavior
I mean,
again and again. I mean,
that schemata is filled in. I mean, with the more metaphysical concepts of what brings on sadness.
I'm just saying,
But
there are
we're
things
born
that
with
we
the
learn.
ability
There are
to cry
cultural things that we learn
automatically.
Right.
We have those pathways in our brains. We have the limbic system. We will experience anger. We will experience, happiness, even in the lack of a teacher to get those more high fidelity concepts of when we should feel happy and sad and angry and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
We will still feel those things in the environment if we are left to our own devices. So, like, say you manage to have a child conceived into the open air, and then forced to live on a desert island, and it would survive, and it would, not die immediately because we're, weak and squishy. So say you have that fulfilled. If that child finds food when it's hungry, when it's starving, the limbic system will kick in and it will feel joy. Now, the ability to have the schemata there to know, like, socially, when we should feel happy and sad about different things, like love when you meet someone for the first time that you just really identify with and who really validates you, or hate when somebody does something you just absolutely cannot stand. They're your antithesis. So
we might say that those are programmed.
They're not programmed.
Well, but no, Tanner, no. But look, seriously.
Socially conditioned.
If we have something, if we build something, right, that can replicate, as you say, but then we build it, and then it makes a culture of its own, independent of our own.
But there's a degree of separation.
Being alive, in your definition, or conscious at least.
There's a degree of separation there.
Well, you're making the degree.
I am.
Well,
this is based on my own perspective.
This is John Connor broadcasting from the Resistance.
To me, there's therefore no separation. It's just something that you're actively doing. It's in this way. It's in this way.
I'm drawing this metaphysical line. Yes.
Is there such a thing as there's something it is like to be Bray? Is there not such a thing as there's something it is like to be this computer software? Like I'm trying to say is there a sort of experience to being a Bray, and there's not an experience to being this computer thing that Bray's trying to tell you is conscious?
Is there a difference? Yes.
Well, there's certainly... Well, no matter what state of affairs, I can only infer that there is a difference. What I'm trying to say is there at least a something, like a binary yes or no?
Is there an equivalence we can draw? Not a total equivalence, but I mean, there's certainly a line of inspiration you could follow from one to the other. We can only ever create something that fulfills our own schemata. We can only ever make in our own image or our own conception. We can.
Yeah, another thing that would be worthwhile to point out here is that, computers right now, like what we, and this is to Tanner's credit in the feeling aspect, is that, computers, while they may execute similar functions that we do, storing things in memory, accessing them later, performing tasks based on, information input and stuff, they don't have all of those chemicals swirling around in their brain and body that affect those feelings, and so they don't get that experience, and that experience is so fundamental to our experiences that I think that's one of the first things that we, whether we are aware of it or not, disqualify automatons for, because if it, like Tanner said, whether it's a natural instinct or if it's something that's been conditioned by society, they don't have that rush of joy when seeing, a family member or well, for some people, but
So, yeah.
but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And so we recognize that as something that's what it is like to be human, or the human condition, the human experience. But were it programmed that way, or by some huge weird biotechnical futuristic dystopia, we make robots with all of those same chemical functions somehow, it could be possible. But right now, nah. I mean, I'm definitely can see the, I'm by no means trying to say that this hunk of junk that's keeping me connected to you guys right now and running the display is conscious, but I think maybe one day it could be.
Well, here's a question for you. I have a question for you. So there's one area of the field in neuroscience, in computational neuroscience, called neuromorphic computation. It's basically the study of simulating neurons. That is to say, simulating the synapses between neurons, the neurons themselves, within a simulation of some sort. To better understand neurons, at least in its current iteration, but also, if you want to look at it as a very grand scale, simulating a human brain within a piece of software, let's say. If you want to say you have a supercomputer that's capable of doing it, you are able to perfectly simulate the movement of neurotransmitters between synapses, as well as the overall brain itself, full of all the astrocytes and the blood-brain barrier being fed in. And let's say you even feed in sense perceptions into it, which is all part of sort of a simulation of a room that something is in. That is to say that I'm trying to create for you an idea of a brain that exists within this software, that it has sense perceptions brought to it, as well as memories existing within it, complexity, let's say. And it exists within this world, software simulation world that I've created, and it is entirely a simulation. All of it. The neurons that are being simulated, as well as the neurotransmitters that are populated within the synapses that activate, like the sodium channels, and then every other possible channel you can think of. It's a very complex simulation. Now the question is, and I think this is what I've been trying to get at, not very aptly, but suffice to say, what I've been trying to get at is there something it is like to be this simulated being within this space? In the same way that there is something it is like to be Bray. Bray, there is a something about you in the deafening silence of the room where the sophist says nothing. You say nothing back to it because you're smart and sane. There is something about you, Bray. There is something about you there. You are present. There is a somethingness. There's awareness. Not awareness in the sense that everything is, or like that, how complex you could make the word awareness. Just, there is something about you, that very binary yes or no. Yes, there is something about you, Bray. Can the same thing be said about this simulated consciousness? I guess we could end
perhaps.
Yes.
If I might be able to say one thing.
Always.
No. They are.
If you are Tanner, if you are a physicality, you have no extra spice. What I just gave you is a perfect mimicry.
Well, no. I do believe there is something more to this experience, to the emotion, than just the sum of its interactions, and then just it chemically. Huh? There is something more to the human experience than just the neurotransmitters. So, while I do believe in, the physicalness of it all, I do also appreciate the metaphysical aspects of the human condition.
Mm-hmm.
I think there is something more to being human than just fulfilling these tasks. So, I don't believe in a soul, but I do believe in something soul-like, which I would say is maybe derived from our consciousness, as I would describe it from my point of view. Something that can be replicated but cannot be duplicated. And so, from my point of view, I would say that you cannot say there is something it is to be like that simulation, because it is a simulation.
So
It
here's
is
the question.
it is
Okay.
just a model of these things happening, these interactions. I
So
really appreciate the scientific method and all it has done for us and its ability to answer what questions. But there are questions it can't answer, and those are why questions. And it fails miserably at answering why questions. It
mhm.
doesn't have the capacity to answer why questions, which is why we have philosophy itself for those capital T truths to tackle with them and grapple and think and ponder and ascribe our own meaning to these things.
Mhm.
And that is from one whence I think consciousness is derived. The ability to take a what, no? To take a thing, no? And then reason beyond it and ask a why, no?
I'll for now I'll accept the possibility that there are other things other than physicality to exist present within you that gives you this extra something rather within you. Let's say Tanner, beyond just your physical means, beyond just the neurotransmitters. But here's a question though: who does the bestowing? Let me open up on what exactly I mean by that. If you are a physicality, and then that physicality leads to the consciousness, the qualia, that is to say, the something or rather it is to be Tanner, that exists present within you. And if I do a perfect mimicry within software of all of those things, not necessarily of being Tanner, but I could make it that way if you want me to set up this game like that, of a brain, let's say, and I set it up in all the same ways that the physicality that is you is assembled, or a human is assembled, who decides where is the bestowing happening? Because it seems to me that they are both physicalities, and if there isn't a god that decides or ordains that this thing here has a soul or this thing here has a consciousness, then it is all derived in physicality. It requires physicality in order for it to subsist upon itself. There is nothing else. That isn't to say that that is all that there is. I don't necessarily know that, but I will say that if you're going to talk about uh, there being something else, then you need to talk about where that something else is coming from. And if it isn't from the physicality, then I think it's necessarily true to say while I don't necessarily know whether or not there is something is like to be that computer system or that simulation, I do think that that argument isn't properly able to encounter it. That is to say, that software, insofar as it is a replication of all the physicality, if it is, then it is also bestowed. Otherwise, who does the bestowing?
And that question will be answered on the next consciousness episode of Four Mortal Coils.
Fair enough. All right.
Yeah.
Well, we can.
I guess we'll
we
keep
can.
this one open ended. I guess.
Yeah, I guess we should. I really drove it on. Well, here to actually cut off the episode, I'd like to start with Bray. If you'd like to give some closing remarks, we'll wrap around.
This was a really fun conversation. Like my brain has been fully engaged on and talking about something that I thought was really going to be super complicated, but turns out it's actually really fun. So thanks guys for that. I'm very much looking forward to the next opportunity that we have for this. Yeah, very, very fun to talk about kind of the most fundamental part of our existence. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Well, next, Stephen, if you have something you'd like to say.
Yeah, it's been good. That being said, if you've made it this far, we thank you, of course. As I always say, brothers and sisters, take care of each other. All right.
Sweet. Tanner, have you got some last words?
You and the self are derived from insanely complex and somewhat almost unknowable biological processes. We have no good explanation for why you exist, why you think, why you reason, why you want, and why you know you want. Those properties of the self are emergent from those biological processes. And I would argue by the existence of that emergence, that from whence emerges from that consciousness, in my definition, to be then emerge something like a soul. You have a soul insofar as it emerges from your ability to be you. And I'd like you all to think about that.
Very cool. Well, with that, this has been Four Mortal Coils signing off for